Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Skrillex album, Recess. Skrillex is an electronic music producer, most known for being a leading figure in the rising popularity of noisy, drop-centric dubstep, aka BROSTEP. Love him blindly as an EDM fanatic or hate his guts as a slightly snobbish fan of more refined genres of electronic music. Skrillex's rise to the top has made him a pretty polarizing figure. And I personally have never really even hated his sound right from the first moment I ever heard it on his Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites EP a handful of years ago. At the time when I dropped my review of that EP, I was actually pretty surprised at some of the negative reactions to my positive feelings on the thing. And while drops and very noisy bass frequencies do play a pretty huge role on the songs from this EP, a production technique that a lot of people equate to pure buffoonery these days, I personally not only enjoyed that, but saw beyond that to see a lot of very jittery, detailed rhythms. I love the fact that these tracks always seem to be shifting in sound and groove, and also brought a lot of color and texture to the table. I thought a lot of tracks on this EP were fun, energetic, hard-hitting, and detailed too. However, even though I do like what Skrillex was doing here, I'm not ready to really defend every move he's made in mainstream music since then. For one, there were a few potholes on his Bangarang EP, even though I think he did come through with some of his hardest bangers yet on that thing. Did not really care for the Doors track there. Also, really didn't dig Skrillex's work on the dubstep-infused Korn album, Path of Totality. And he actually dropped an incredibly weak EP last year titled Leaving, where on a few tracks here it felt like Skrillex was trying to emulate the airy, more atmospheric, more subtle sounds of underground, toned-down dubstep producers like Burial. And while, in a sense, taking on these sounds felt sincere, it really sort of came up short in terms of being as entertaining as some of those artists. So last week, out of the blue, Skrillex decides to just drop his debut full-length album. With this kind of tacky alien cover and title. However, as far as party music goes, I feel like you could do a lot worse than Skrillex, so I didn't go into this thing with maybe the same level of anxiety some of the people who hate listen to this thing did, I'm sure. But for Skrillex, what I think this record comes down to essentially is versatility. Versatility. He's really pushing himself on this record to work with a variety of artists and musical styles, incorporating his typically loud, drop-centric, heavy, party-ready sound to different styles of music. He's really pushing himself on this record to work with a variety of different artists and sounds, seeing how many different places he can take his typically loud, heavy production style and apply it, to different genres. And sometimes it seems like he's taking just a really weird sonic detour as well. I think this is maybe his least cohesive record yet. I don't think there's a whole ton that strings these tracks together. And I would say the single power of this record isn't quite as strong as it was on some of Skrillex's earlier releases as well. Go Skrills, rub it hot! I think the closest Skrillex comes to dropping a track of that intensity, of that quality, is RAGGA with the RAGGA Twins. I love the distorted vocals all over this track. They're really attention-forcing. The groove on the song is fantastic, and the drop is insane! The eerie synth arpeggios that float throughout this track set a really nice tone, and I love the way that the bass and the rhythms sort of go double time toward the end of the track. I love the song, but Skrillex doesn't really concentrate on churning out a massive banger with each track on this thing, which, like I said earlier, does leave this LP feeling less cohesive than previous projects, but I guess it's sort of a silver lining in a way that, nothing kills an album's listenability like taking a great idea and then just copying it 10 or 12 times. Instead, he brings a lot of variety, which does lead to some hit or miss tracks. Like usual, Skrillex does deliver some heavy dubstep bangers with some earworm vocal samples or contributions. Maybe some bright screaming synth leads as well, like on the track Try It Out, or the song Recess 2, although the incessant vocal samples on this track of "put your hands in the air, we don't care," and the fake crowd noises on this song, making it sound like the song is being performed live or being played to a crowd or something like that. It really kills what little is enjoyable about the rhythm and the really sweet, just candy sweet vocal samples on this track. And there's another track on here that features the RAGGA twins as well. The opening track on here, All Is Fair in Love and BROSTEP. A song that, unfortunately, while it does embrace all the tenets of BROSTEP that we have come to expect from a guy like Skrillex, it's just kind of an inconspicuous sort of average song for Skrillex, unfortunately. However, there are tracks on here where he does show that he has some tricks up his sleeve and he's not just a one-trick pony. For one, the song Stranger. A pretty chilly, subdued piece of dance pop that has a really great vocal contribution on it. I love the melody on this track, the vocal melody, that is. However, the beat, the groove, just the overall tone of the song seems like it is the result of having listened to hour upon hour upon hour of the new Disclosure record, Settle. With the very choppy groove in the background on this track and the boyish lead vocals, I think this song might have fit pretty snugly into Settle's track list, along with the song Fuck That too. And even though the influence on this track seems really apparent, I think Skrillex puts his own play on this thing once the heavier drums come into play, and he throws this absurdly squeaky, ridiculous synth lead over the track that, as weird as it sounds, I think I love it. It's great. The song Coast is Clear has Chance the Rapper, which is another huge surprise on this LP, and while lyrically the song is pretty trashy, it is really surprising to hear Skrillex come through with an instrumental that complements Chance so well and sounds like something straight out of the Acid Rap mixtape that came out last year, except maybe a little bit louder, brighter, punchier, featuring the kind of dubstep rhythms that we typically expect from Skrillex. And then there is sort of a surprise remix on this track of the Nicki and the Dove song DJ Ease My Mind, which is titled Ease My Mind on this record. And while I think the song is really great, I loved hearing it on the record that they put out a little while ago, I don't really see what Skrillex does with the track here, other than just sort of make it more appropriate to play in the midst of a DJ set. Other than that, in my opinion, he's really added nothing to the track and made a really great song a lot less dynamic than it originally was. But my least favorite of all of the surprise tracks on here, easily, is the song Doompy Poomp. A really dinky piece of glitchy electronic music that has these just weird cartoony sound effects in it that sound like they were lifted off of just like a general SFX CD or something like that. It's colorful, but the pace of it is really slow. There's nothing much about it that's all that memorable, and it kind of creates this very unnecessary intermission toward the back end of the album. As nice as it was to hear Skrillex just go down some different avenues on this record, I mean, the songs where he's experimenting the most are among my least favorite here, unfortunately. While I think the more heavy bro-step tracks on this record are sort of average for him, they were at least passable for the most part. I mean, the song that he has Diplo on, Dirty Vibe, is this fantastic piece of MOOMBAHTON with this killer rhythm, high energy, and I love the insane vocal sampling on this track, and as the vocals are being sampled, the crazy paradiddles that are being played with them. And I love the way these trap hi-hats fly in as some of the rap verses start on this track. It's highlights like this that for sure will have me coming back and listening to each new Skrillex release, at least into the near future, just to see if there's some killer bangers in the playlist. And I think Skrillex could potentially continue going down that road if he brings these bangers together onto an EP and is just sort of concise with his releases and isn't putting a lot of filler onto them. And unfortunately, I feel like that's kind of what we got with this record. While it does show that Skrillex is a more versatile producer than I think a lot of people give him credit for, you know, he really does kind of push himself out of his comfort zone, proving that he can do one thing, do another thing, do another thing. I think he's considerably far away with all the potholes in the track list on this thing from putting out one of his better releases. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 5 on this thing. Transition. If you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's about it. Anthony Fantano, music review forever.